You've got questions, I've got answers. On today's podcast, I'm going to answer some of the most common questions that I've received via social media, email, as well as in my practice talking to patients one-on-one. If you don't hear that pressing question that you may have, especially as I'm going through some of these today, be sure to follow me on Facebook, send me a message with your question, and I just may cover that on a future Q&A episode. Welcome to the Foundational Health Podcast, where we provide education and inspiration to help guide you on your journey to look better, feel better, and most importantly, heal better. Hello, and welcome to the Foundational Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Kevin Schultz, and today we are going to talk about vaccines, nicotine, and everything in between. The intent of the podcast today is to not do a deep dive on any of the topics that we're going to discuss, but instead, just to give you some great information on what I consider to be the most important things you need to know about each individual topic. We're also going to go over some great resources. Because we're not doing a deep dive, I feel like the resources are even more necessary than usual. And then for those of you that want to do a deeper dive on your own, you'll have the resources, the ability to do that. And then we're going to talk about some excellent action steps for those of you who are ready to take action. All right, let's dive right in. So question number one comes from Sarah. Is fragrance really that bad? So first here, let's start with what fragrance actually is. Fragrance is something that is like if you start to look at ingredients lists, you will see it on literally millions of products worldwide. What it is a blend of dozens and sometimes even hundreds of individual synthetic chemicals used in things like perfumes and colognes and lotions and sunscreens, other beauty products, air fresheners, cleaning products, laundry detergents, and I could keep going on and on and on. Anything that you can think of that has a scent, it probably has fragrance in it, unless you're searching for something that doesn't. So what are the potential health concerns? So fragrances have been linked to skin irritations, allergies in some people, skin and other rashes in certain people, as well as eye irritation, really, really common, and then lung irritation is also very common to the extent, and I actually get this myself, if I'm adjusting somebody that has a lot of cologne on or they have a lot of perfume, definitely instantly irritates my lungs to the point where it starts a dry, almost uncontrollable cough. Now, like most things, the amount of irritation, the skin irritation, the rashes, all of that, it can certainly vary from person to person as far as sensitivity goes. But I do promise you, even if you have little noticeable irritation, it is horrible for you, fragrance that is, because it is synthetic chemicals. And it's something you want to avoid at all costs wherever you can, in my opinion. Fragrance is also a known, what they call endocrine disruptor, which is a pretty big deal if you know what endocrine disruptors are. Basically, it means that it's something that either mimics or blocks a hormone or just alters the way hormones work. So it alters like the transporting of hormones around the body, the production of hormones, and then also alters the way that the body is able to remove hormones. And then all of that, whether it's blocking, altering, mimicking, it leads to an imbalance of hormones in the body. So is fragrance the cause of all of your problems and all of your symptoms? Pretty confidently say probably not. But it is likely part of the picture, especially when you combine that with all of the other toxins that we're exposed to on a daily basis. So the action step here, at a minimum, you want to look for products that are fragrance-free. And then if you do need to add a scent to them, you put in a few drops of your favorite essential oils. So a perfect example, my wife does this for our laundry detergent. So whatever scent it is, and I'm sure she's got some, I don't even know what that is, but she'll do a couple drops of essential oil in with the laundry to make up for that scent-free. Certainly not necessary, but that's an example of what you can do, and you can do that with all kinds of other things as well. Then for those of you that don't already have a resource for essential oils, Nutridyne on our website has a huge selection of very, very high quality essential oils. And then another idea is essential oil diffusers can replace nasty, toxic chemical air fresheners for your home, for your car. And then the cool thing here is not only are you removing those poison chemicals from the fragrance in your air, but essential oils actually have health benefits as well. They don't just smell good, there's benefits to those. In the ideal world, you are looking beyond fragrance. You're looking for products that also don't contain or are at least very low in other harmful chemicals as well. We have several of those listed in our one-stop health shop on our website. You can also go to ewg.org. Probably heard me talk about that website before. That's an awesome resource as well. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later and go into a little bit more depth on how to navigate that website, because it can be, they have a lot of information on there, all good, but it can be a little bit difficult to navigate and find exactly what you're looking for. But ewg.org is an amazing resource if you've never used it. Second question comes from Angela N. Angela says, what is your perspective on CPTSD and somatic movements to regulate the nervous system? So first, let me say this is an amazing question, really, really good, and it's a hugely important topic. Almost everybody's familiar with PTSD, which of course is post-traumatic stress disorder. CPTSD is actually complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And then the main difference between the two is that PTSD usually is the result of one traumatic event or a couple of traumatic singular events, whereas CPTSD is the result of prolonged, chronic, repeated trauma, often that takes place in childhood over years. Here's my very simple, brief perspective that Angela asked for. I think somatic movements for things like CPTSD, PTSD are amazing. And I think they are millions of times better than synthetic chemical drug concoctions that only cover up and try to hide symptoms that you're experiencing. Somatic movements actually will heal the brain and the nervous system and help to rewire it, as opposed to pharmaceutical drugs, which are linked to actually, believe it or not, long-term brain damage. 2 action step resources here. Number 1, Dr. Axe, who is most people are familiar with in the natural health world. That's AXE, and we'll have a link to this in the show notes. But he's a friend and colleague of mine from the past. He has an amazing article actually on somatic movements. And again, you can find that link in our show notes. The second resource there, for those of you who are listening and watching that are in my area here in Wisconsin, there's an incredible place called Trinity Equestrian Center that does horse therapy for people suffering from PTSD and CPTSD. I'm very excited to say that I get to be one of their guest speakers at an incredible event that they're putting on this fall. It's called the Strength in Service Summit. It's their first annual event, and it is going to be amazing. So we have a link to Trinity Equestrian Center in general, as well as a link to purchase tickets for that event in the show notes. That's coming up October later this year, 2025. So really, really looking forward to that event and to talking about how people can deal with mental health issues when they're just doing that in a natural way through things like nutrition and exercise and supplementation and so many other things that I'll be covering at that event. Next question comes from Barb S. So this question is somewhat related to what I just talked about, especially with mental health. What are your thoughts on saffron for mental health and depression? Saffron, for those of you that don't know, and I definitely didn't know this a couple of years ago, it was new to me, but it is an ancient spice, little interesting side note here. It is the most expensive spice in the entire world and costs approximately $5,000 per pound. So a very, very expensive spice. So here's my thoughts on it. I think saffron is great, and it has shown good promise in many people for helping with things like depression, anxiety, and plenty of other mental health issues. But what I'm a much bigger fan of is making sure your body is not missing essential nutrients that it needs for mental health, for brain health, for nervous system health. And saffron, even though good and promising, is certainly not an essential nutrient. So 3 of the most important supplements that you could ever take for anything mental health related are things like spore-based probiotics, vitamin D3 with K2, high-quality omega-3 fish oils that have EPA and DHA in them. And all 3 of those just happen to be part of what we call the foundational 4 supplements here at Foundational Health. And they're not only good for mental health, but skin health, heart health, bone health, every other area of your body. And the reason for that is just because they are essential raw nutrients, essential building blocks that your body needs to perform daily functions, including your brain working and functioning the way that it's supposed to. So I won't go into details on all of these, but I'll just give you one example that most people are familiar with. For example, if somebody is low in vitamin D3, we know this is directly related to seasonal affective disorder, what they call SAD, which is more common during the winter months. It's also remarkably more common in places like Alaska and other places that lack light entirely for large portions of the year. And so that vitamin D3 is just critical when it comes to brain health. The action step here, take the foundational 4 before adding in other supplements, and you may find you don't even need the saffron or any of those others because now you're giving your body what it needs to work the way that it's supposed to in the first place. Nicotine is my number 1 choice for the vast majority of my family supplements. I'm a huge fan of nearly everyone taking what I call the foundational 4 supplements: a multivitamin, a spore-based probiotic, omega-3 fish oil, and vitamin D3 with K2. The large majority of people are deficient in many of these nutrients, and they are the building blocks to gut health, immune system strength, brain health, heart health, and every other aspect of your health. Don't fall into the trap of chasing symptoms with supplements, and instead start to rebuild your health with the foundational 4. We partnered with Nicotine so that you can save 15% on every order, and not just with the foundational 4, but all of your other supplements as well. Go to foundationalhealth365.com, click on Shop Brands, and then Nicotine, set up your account, and you're all set to automatically get 15% off all orders. Now let's get back to the Foundational Health Podcast. Next question comes from Rita B. So Rita says, could you talk about thyroid issues and alternatives to things like levothyroxine? And then Cindy D has a question also that I'm going to throw into the answer here. And her question is TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, the only thing to look at when you are looking at the health of the thyroid and trying to figure out what's going on? So the answer here, proper testing is key when you want to truly get to the cause of thyroid issues. And many times a medical doctor will only test for TSH, certainly not all of them. Some of them know a lot more about the thyroid and they'll take a deeper dive, but often they will look at just TSH, which doesn't even come close to giving you a complete picture of the thyroid at all. You can, however, do a comprehensive thyroid panel, which looks at TSH, as well as things like T3 and T4, and then other aspects of the thyroid as well. It also looks for toxicity, things like mercury and other toxins that can build up in the thyroid or in the body in general and cause problems with how the thyroid functions. It looks at nutrient deficiencies for things that we know the thyroid needs and requires, like selenium and iodine and other key nutrients needed for proper thyroid function on a daily basis. So the action steps here: eat whole foods rich in iodine. So things like seaweed, things like raw cheeses. And raw cheeses, by the way, you can buy in all 50 states in all stores. It's not like raw milk that is a lot harder to come by in many states like Wisconsin, but raw cheeses contain iodine. And then seaweed, you might be thinking, like, where in the world am I going to get seaweed? You can actually buy little wafers of seaweed. I don't know if wafers is the right word, but they're very thin little crispy things, dried seaweed. You just want to look for those that contain things like olive oil or coconut oil instead of other nasty seed oils. Selenium-containing foods are things like Brazil nuts. Really high, actually. Brazil nuts are fantastic. Spinach, 100% grass-fed beef also contains a lot of selenium. Zinc, another important nutrient. Animal proteins are high in zinc, high-quality animal proteins especially, and then things like peas and Brussels sprouts as well. There are also high-quality supplements that contain those nutrients, and if you need additional support above and beyond food, then supplementation is a great idea. And for those of you that want to do a deeper dive with a comprehensive thyroid panel and are unable to do that through your medical doctor, just want to do it in the comfort of your own home, we also offer that at Foundational Health. So the beautiful thing is you can do all of that through at-home lab testing, just little finger prick blood tests. And then from there, when we get the results, we'll give you a complete interpretation and then a recommendation based on your specific results. So if you want to explore that option, just click on lab testing on our website and you'll find that test on there. Next question comes from Dana B. What is the biggest myth you would like to clarify? So this is actually my favorite question that I got on Facebook because it made me think, because there was a lot of things that came to mind. There's so many myths out there in the natural health world or in the healthcare world in general. So it took me a while, took a lot of thought to put into this, like, what is the one thing that I want to address here? So here it is. The myth is that your body needs synthetic pharmaceutical drugs to be healthy or to heal. The truth is your body is a self-healing, self-regulating machine. So there's a saying in the natural health world that goes something like this: if you tell a lie big enough, long enough, with enough money behind it, eventually it becomes accepted truth, even though it remains a lie at its core. Really important to understand exactly what that means. So let's think about this for a second. The pharmaceutical companies have done an amazing job at selling their lie for so many decades that God's natural herbal and plant-based cures found throughout nature, things like massage, chiropractic, acupuncture, even supplementation, or even whole food diets for that matter, are called alternative medicine or alternative therapies. So alternatives to what? They're alternative, of course, to synthetic chemical concoction. So society has bought into this lie so much so that even if you talk about natural cures or herbal remedies, you're automatically labeled as a quack in the mainstream. Did you know that most pharmaceutical drugs are actually designed to mimic herbs? They're designed to mimic plants. In fact, 25% of them have some form of plants in them. They just, of course, change it chemically, synthetically, and they have other things that are found throughout nature as well. So that's what pharmaceutical drugs are trying to do. They're trying to mimic natural things, even natural things like we talked about this in my GLP-1 Ozempic podcast, natural things that are found in the human body. They just change that from a natural substance to a synthetic substance. But the problem is the pharmaceutical approach is all, again, synthetic and GMO or genetically modified versions of these natural products. And then as a result of that, they do not have the same effect in your body because the body sees them as an invader, hence the negative side effects that come along with these things. So often I hear, but yeah, natural cures don't work as well, or they typically take longer. And usually it's not a matter of they don't work as well. It's just that people want instant results, which drugs, whether it's over the counter or pharmaceutical prescribed drugs, certainly will have a quicker instant results because it is a synthetic chemical. The natural cures just typically do take longer, and that is because there's no shortcut to healing. So when you're using natural methods, the body goes through natural healing processes like it's supposed to. This is why it's called the healing process, not the healing event. Okay, so that is all I'm going to say about that one because I could keep going forever, but that question was fantastic. Really appreciate that, Dana. So we're going to move on to the next question, which comes from Eddie S. Eddie says, are statin drugs as bad as what I am hearing about them? The shorter answer on this is yes, they are actually pretty awful. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And for those of you who want all the info related to that topic, I dedicated an entire podcast to this back on November 26th of 2024. And that has been, for sure, at this point, our most downloaded, most listened to podcast. So be sure to check that out. Next question comes from Megan M. And this is a really good question. I've actually gotten this from quite a few people lately, so really good to clear up. When you say drink half your ideal body weight in water per day or eat approximately 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight, what is that based on as far as ideal body weight is concerned? Is there a chart, or should it be based on what my goal is for my ideal body weight? So again, really good questions, come up with a lot of people lately. Here's the answer. It does not have to be exact at all. You don't have to look at a chart or anything like that for that matter. And it shouldn't also necessarily be based on your weight goal, although it could, depending on what your goal is. So meaning if somebody weighs 500 pounds and they wanted to get to 400 pounds, that was their goal, well, they wouldn't certainly need to drink 200 ounces of water per day, and they certainly wouldn't need to eat 400 grams of protein on a daily basis. So both of those would be pretty excessive, in my opinion. So it would be more something like this. If somebody was 5'8", they weighed 500 pounds, they could estimate, this is the key here, you don't have to follow a chart, you could estimate that your ideal body weight is somewhere probably in that 150 to 200 pound range. Doesn't mean it has to be your goal, doesn't mean you have to get there, but that's what you're estimating for your ideal body weight. And then, as a result of that, you would shoot for around 75 to 100 ounces of water per day because you're going for half of your ideal body weight in ounces per day. And you'd also shoot for around 150 to 200 grams of protein daily. So the variance there from 150 to 200 grams or 75 to 100 ounces is really important because you don't want to get to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't get in my exact 100 ounces today, or I didn't get in my 200 grams of protein per day. There is a range. The body is incredibly intelligent. If you're low one day and you're high the next, and you're right in the middle the next, it all balances out. Your body uses what it needs. So this doesn't have to be something that you put too much thought into. It does not have to be exact at all. So hopefully that provides a little more clarity. Next question comes from Amanda S. What do you recommend for sunscreen, and what does your family use? So I'm going to jump right into a fun fact with this one, actually. I've talked about this a little bit in the past, but really just a mention. I also had a mention on this for a Facebook post, I think last year near the 4th of July. So here's the action step here in the fun fact. You want to avoid sunglasses when you first get in the sun for 15 minutes or so, and then you periodically want to take them off while you're in the sun. Why would you do that? When sunlight naturally enters your eyes, so this is the key here, when the sunlight enters your eyes, which of course sunglasses block those UV rays, but when that sunlight naturally enters your eyes, it tells your brain to produce something called melanin. And you've probably heard of melanin before. It's a natural substance that your body produces that helps you tan and prevents you from burning. So if you are wearing sunglasses, that whole bodily process is thrown off. Your body doesn't produce melanin, and as a result, you will burn more rapidly. They've shown this in multiple studies. It's not a theory. And when I posted this in the past, and I've actually seen some of my friends post it since as well, and people attack, they go into attack mode because they love their sunglasses so much. So I saw some comments like, this is crazy. If I don't wear sunglasses, it hurts my eyes. You expect me to not wear sunglasses in the winter with the blinding snow or on a boat? No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what other people are saying. What we are saying is more often than not, you should be without those sunglasses at least for periods of time. The most important period of time is right when you enter the sun, so it can start that natural process from taking place. So if you follow the sunglass rule, then you need less sunscreen for sure. That's where I'm going with all of this. So this is where I'm going to dive into that EWG.org a little bit more, and then I'll give my recommendations of what my family uses as well, even though that's probably not the best recommendations for you and your family. So when you go to EWG.org, there's a ton on that website. Up at the top of the screen, you will see Skin Deep Database. You'll click on that, and then from there, you would type in whatever keyword. So in this case, we would type into the search box sunscreen. And if I remember right, there's something like 1,700 different sunscreens that come up in that search. So it is a very thorough database, and that means they have tested these 1,700. So you might not find every sunscreen you're looking for necessarily, but you'll find 1,700 of them that EWG.org has tested. And then you can even filter from there. So you can just click the filter to best to worst, and you'll get the best recommendations. Now, typically what you'll see with sunscreen is the best recommendations, meaning the ones that are the least toxic, that's where we're going with all of this, are what are called mineral sunscreens. And this is where I'm not necessarily suggesting you follow my recommendations, but just to be blunt, I would rather burn than to look like a mime when I'm at the beach. And if you're using mineral sunscreens, they are the ones that leave that white film all over your skin. So some people don't care about that. Fantastic. That is the best route. I do care about that, and so does the rest of my family. And so for that reason, as well as the fact that we honestly just love the convenience of a spray, we don't use sunscreen very often at all. This is if we're at a beach, on a boat, and we're going to be in the sun for extended periods of time. We just love the convenience of sprays where we can easily spray that on the kids quickly, easily spray that on ourselves. So the three brands that we use the most often, one of them is called Elba Botanical. Now, any of these actually that I'm mentioning, I should preface it with this. You can't just find a brand, and this would apply to anything, whether it is a food or a laundry detergent. You can't just find a brand and then find one of their products that is pretty good and then assume the rest of their products are good, because that is not often the case. So for instance, the Elba Botanical brand, if you buy just their regular one, like a coconut scented one, it has fragrance in it. It has other things in it that aren't necessarily things you want in there. Whereas if you buy their, I think it's called the Sport Sunscreen, which you can find again on EWG.org, that would be the one that has the least amount of bad things in it. There's another brand called Sun Bum, which has a spray that we use. Coppertone, believe it or not, even makes a spray that is low on the toxicity scale. So the way that EWG.org works is what it used to be a 0 to 10 scale. Now the 0 has turned into EWG verified. So that means if something says EWG verified, that it has a score of 0, and then the rest is scored from 1 to 10. 1 is still really good. 10 would be as toxic of a concoction as you can possibly get. So all three of those that I just mentioned, the Elba Botanical, the Sun Bum, the Coppertone one that we use, all three of those score a 3. So not ideal, certainly not a 0, but again, we love the convenience of that. So for us, because we use it not that frequently, and because we try to cut out toxins in every single area of our life, we're not personally concerned with that. And then for those of you that really just want to hit the easy button, you're not ready to go to EWG.org, we do have the one-stop health shop on our website. I've got an Amazon sunscreen on there. I I think it is like Surf to Sea or something. Don't quote me on that exactly, but you'll find that as well as other personal care products. And we are still actively working all the time at building out that store for people that do want to hit the easy button. So you're not going to see a huge extensive list yet, but you will see this as well as other things under the kitchen, household, personal care products list for sure. Next question, Kim L. So Kim says, intermittent fasting, is this good for men as well as for women? Intermittent fasting has been shown in most studies to be great for men, but in women, specific studies, meaning that studies that they do specifically on women because of the hormonal differences, it's not so great because of those hormonal differences. So that being said, I am a huge fan of fasting in general. I personally think doing regular fasting not only builds great mental strength and discipline, but there's also something that takes place in the body called autophagy, which is where your cells recycle and basically eat their own damaged parts and debris. So it's a hugely important healing process in the body where your cells are just constantly doing what they're supposed to do, cleaning themselves up so they can function at a higher level, so you can heal at a higher level. So there are two really known things that are great at dramatically boosting autophagy. So number one would be exercise. It's actually even better than fasting. So another reason to start exercising on a regular basis. And then number two, of course, what we're talking about here is fasting. So even though I don't think women should intermittent fast based on studies, not just my opinion, even though I don't think they should do that on a regular basis, I don't think it's a big deal to do it here and there, and also to throw in some 1 to 3 day fasts on a regular basis throughout the year so your body can do more healing, more of that autophagy, cleaning up that cellular waste and debris. So I do intermittent fasting daily. I've done that for years, but I would not do that if I was a female, to answer your question. My daily intermittent fasting window is from 7-ish p.m. to 11-ish a.m. every day. That's just based on my schedule. So if you break that down, I've got about a 16-hour fasting window daily and an 8-hour eating window. And again, I do that pretty close to 7 days a week, but just like everything I talk about, I don't count calories. I don't beat myself up if I don't follow that fasting rule, because those things aren't critical. You don't have to be exact with any of this stuff. So I also do a 24-hour fast every Monday. I've done this for years as well. And I personally think this is a great practice for men and women, not only for all of the benefits of fasting, but for me, do I ever want to do this 24-hour fast? No, not necessarily. I would love to eat during the day. So it builds that mental strength, that mental fortitude. I think that is hugely important, honestly, for every aspect of your life. And it's not as difficult as it sounds either. So my 24-hour period is from Sunday night dinner to Monday night dinner. So I'm not going all Monday without food. You can. There's even more to benefit if you turn that into a 36-hour fast and wait till the next morning on Tuesday morning to eat. I just personally choose not to do that the majority of the time because I get home, I'm hungry, my family's eating dinner, I want to eat dinner. Next question also comes from Kim L. What is the best magnesium supplement? Nutridyne has a new product called Quad Mag. So that has become my personal favorite, as you might guess with the name Quad. It has 4 different magnesium types in there, and it's high quality, very bioavailable form, which means it's effective because it absorbs very well into your body. And then most people are deficient in magnesium, and this gives you everything you need for brain health, heart health, overall cellular health, and much, much more of the things that magnesium does in your body. Next question comes from Amanda. When it comes to natural sugars like fruit, is there a certain amount to stay under? So great question. Not such an easy answer. And the reason there's not an easy answer here is because it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, just like most things are. So, for example, if someone's diabetic and they want to overcome and reverse diabetes, our 60-day protocol has them not consuming any fruit for 60 days while their body goes through that healing process, and then they can resume eating fruit again. If you then have a healthy individual, polar opposite end of the spectrum, very healthy individual, no sickness, no disease, no symptoms. They exercise. They don't get a lot of processed sugar on a regular basis. They can get by with eating a lot more fruit and veggies and getting all of that natural sugar in there. But if you're looking for some general guidelines on this, in my opinion, the average person can certainly easily consume 2 to 3 servings of fruit per day. They can have 3 to 4 servings of vegetable per day without any concerns of too much sugar. I have an upcoming podcast on this in the next couple of months, so you can look for that. And it's going to talk about the difference between complex carbs, which are fruits and vegetables and other things like whole grain, long brown rice as opposed to minute rice. So we're going to talk about the difference between complex carbs and processed carbs and how your body sees those two as completely different things. So again, be on the lookout for that where I'll go into more detail. So hopefully that gives you a lot of information. I'm going to finish out here with the 2 most controversial questions that I have received, and I have received these from countless people. So be sure to listen closely to this part. And then for those of you that are not necessarily that open-minded yet to natural health, which I do find that is the case with a lot of people that find my podcast or referred to my podcast. So keep an open mind on this and just listen to what I'm saying instead of instantly getting offended. Again, this comes from multiple people. The COVID vaccine, yes or no? What do you recommend? So I'll repeat. I know this is a heated topic and a very controversial one for some people, but it really shouldn't be at all. My answer to this question is not political. It's also not emotional. The whole trust the science agenda during COVID and following COVID is honestly, it's just 100% fabricated because there was actually no science that we could trust. There was no safety studies done on these before they were released. Nothing. And yes, I realize you can, and some people do make the argument on a regular basis. I've had people make this argument with me when I have a very friendly discussion because I'm not an argumentative person, that pharmaceutical companies couldn't do studies because they had to rush it to market. So that may be true for sure. Definitely wouldn't argue that. But that is exactly why it shouldn't have been forced on people or ever recommended for children, in my very strong opinion. And it's exactly why they shouldn't have also told people to trust the science when there wasn't any. The reality is there are so many God-given nutrients and things you can do that will protect your body so much better than any vaccine ever will, and can and will do that without all of the potential side effects. So what did my family do? Especially, and I'm referring to during COVID. We do this on a regular basis anyway, but especially during COVID. I got the question all the time, what are you guys doing? What are you doing to protect yourselves? What do you do with your kids? What do you and Sarah do? Whole food nutrition. Exercise, sleep, red light therapy, sauna, grounding, sunlight, fresh air. We nebulized and still do with natural ingredients. We take the foundational 4 supplements along with other detoxification supplements like NAC, which has been shown to protect the lungs, and other things that didn't involve injecting a toxic unknown chemical directly into our body with unknown possible side effects, including death. So the main takeaway here is this. I promise you, the government, mainstream media, pharmaceutical companies do not have your best interest at heart. That should not be controversial in any way. They do not have your best interest at heart. And if you believe they do, you might want to start doing some research on your own and use the critical thinking part of your brain that God gave you. So I promise I say all of that with 100% love and not out of judgment for any decision anyone has made in the past or makes in the future. I'm not telling you what to do. This is the way that I look at it based on my knowledge, using critical thinking, looking at actual science. I just believe in truth. I don't believe in lies. And I also believe in choices, not mandates and forcing people to do things. The very last question. and this is kind of a follow-up because it's also something that we started doing during COVID as a family. This one comes from Joelle, and I've actually gotten this question in the office from 3 different people in the last 2 days, so it's definitely becoming more common. Nicotine pros and cons. So let me start with this. When I first heard about the potential benefits of nicotine, my initial thought is probably exactly what yours is right now if you're hearing this for the first time. I literally said to my buddy Nathan, who was the first one that brought this to me, I'm like, what are you talking about? Nicotine? Like, we're talking nicotine in cigarettes and chew, and I'm supposed to believe that that actually is good for you? So let me explain it, and hopefully I can break it down in a way that it actually makes sense. So we're going to start with this. You have receptors, everybody has receptors on cells throughout your body. In fact, 2 of them on all of these cells called nicotinic receptors. They're found in your organs, your brain, your spinal cord, all of your peripheral nerves that travel to every single area of your body, as well as your muscles and other areas throughout the body. So you have to ask yourself the question, why would your body have nicotine receptors on all of these cells if your body didn't need and require nicotine? Why would God put those receptors there? First of all, did you know that nicotine is found naturally in things like potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, and other things, even like cauliflower, very trace amounts in cauliflower? Potatoes and tomatoes and eggplants are the highest sources that it's found in nature. So, little side note there, it is something that is found in nature. It's not just from the tobacco plant. And here's what we know. These receptors, when they don't have adequate amounts of nicotine on them, they are sites where toxins and viruses like the COVID virus and other viruses, Epstein-Barr viruses, and other ones that are actually linked to cancer and other awful things in the body, those viruses will bind and stay in your body long term when you don't have adequate amounts of nicotine on those receptors. We also know when you introduce nicotine into the body in adequate amounts, it kicks those viruses off of the nicotine receptors because those receptors prefer nicotine because they are nicotine receptors. So in the science world, they say that those nicotinic receptors have a stronger affinity for nicotine than they do for anything else. And that is why very quickly you can have those receptors kick off the virus and bring on nicotine, and then the body gets rid of that virus. We also know that these receptors, if they have adequate amounts of nicotine in the first place, then viruses entering your body can't bind to those receptors in the first place. I'm not going to go into making any specific recommendations on this podcast. You can certainly reach out to me if you do want some specific recommendations through email from our website or on Facebook Messenger. But if I've at least piqued your interest in this, and you can set aside all the years of brainwashing that nicotine is this horrible, awful substance, then I highly recommend checking out some information from a man named Dr. Bryan Ardis, Ardis. He's got the most research, the most beneficial information out there, in my opinion, by far. And I will say one last thing before I close this up. Again, we've been told nicotine is so horrible for you to the extent they've looked at removing nicotine from cigarettes. But what are they leaving in cigarettes? Do you know that cigarettes contain over 200 highly addictive, highly toxic synthetic chemicals? And yet they're talking about removing nicotine from them. Now, again, I'm not suggesting you should smoke cigarettes. I'm not suggesting you should chew. Neither one of those. Or vaping. Vaping actually is horrific for you because it contains synthetic nicotine. But what I am suggesting is keep an open mind. If I piqued your interest, again, check out Dr. Bryan Ardis or reach out to me for specific recommendations. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's podcast. I know I did, and I would love to dive into more questions and answers in the future. So keep the questions coming for sure. The inspirational and educational takeaways from today. Success equals simple habits performed daily over time. Number 2, keep an open mind and force yourself to put critical thought not only into your health choices, but everything that you are told to believe. Number 3, you are a leader. If you enjoyed today's podcast and you found it beneficial, think about who needs to hear this message and be a leader for them. Drop them a text, tell them to check out the Foundational Health Podcast with Dr. Kevin Schultz, vaccines, nicotine, and everything in between Q&A. Until next time, make health your hobby. Thank you for listening to the Foundational Health Podcast. As always, if you would like to learn more about making health your hobby, visit our website at foundationalhealth365.com and follow me on Facebook at Kevin Schultz DC Foundational Health.